Hello. Last week we talked about the power sag feature of the Pedal Power 2, how that affects things. I talked a little bit about milliamps and current and some other stuff like that. This week I want to dive a little bit deeper into it because I think it's going to help you understand milliamps, how much power a pedal needs, how to know all that sort of thing, like the confusing subject of what actually is a milliamp. So I'm not going to really dive into that part of it, but I'm going to help explain it to you so you know what kind of power you're going to need. So let's jump into it. All right, so let's talk a little bit about milliamps, because this is another confusing point that confuses a lot of people. On this particular one, several of these outputs are 100 milliamp output. Other power supplies, like a True Tone, or this is our power supply, it's a 2 amp, which is like 2,000 milliamps. And even if you plug it into just one pedal, you're not going to give it too much current. It doesn't work that way. It's going to basically use what it needs. Now, what you don't want to do if you're daisy chaining, this is a daisy chain, just one big strand that allows you to connect to other pedals on the power side. If you're doing that, you don't want to exceed that 2,000 milliamps. So this is where you're going to have to go to the website of the pedal company and see what it consumes, or if they don't have it on there, you're going to have to contact them and ask them. And there may be some sites that have pedals listed. I'm not really sure. But basically, you just don't want to exceed that. You're probably, as far as I know, you're not going to break anything. At least with our pedal line, you're not going to mess anything up. It just won't work as expected. But it also does bring other problems, brings noise and some other things like that. And I'll get into that in a second. A good way to think about amperage, like if you're like on your house, a lot of times, for example, in here, I'm on 15 amp breaker circuits. So that means that if once I start to kind of use more than 15 amps, that breaker can kick or kick off, which is basically, it's like a safety feature. That doesn't mean that I'm using 15 amps at all times through a little light that I'm plugging in. It just uses whatever it needs to at that point. Same sort of idea with pedals. And a good way to, I know voltage and current, and that's kind of, it's one of those things that's hard to explain in non-electrical terms, but it's also one of those things that's important to understand. So I like to think of it this way. Voltage, let's say you have like a big tank of water. The pressure coming out of that is kind of like voltage, and the amount of water coming out is sort of like current. So let's say it has a standard size opening, and the amount that's coming out, it's kind of like current. Another way to think of it is like a water hose. If you connect your water hose to a sprinkler, you have the same amount of water coming out per minute. If it's going to one sprinkler, that sprinkler is going to go real high, and it's going to be lots of fun. Once you connect it to 2 sprinklers or 3 sprinklers or 4 sprinklers and more and more and more, that same water supply, you'll notice that it doesn't shoot out as high until at some point it's just kind of trickling out, and it's still getting water. It's just not really doing what it's supposed to do. And that's kind of an easy way to think of current and voltage when we're talking about guitar pedals, unless you're going to start being an engineer, and at that point you want to get a lot more into the weeds on exactly what that is, because it's a very layman-esque sort of way I'm trying to explain it. Okay, one last thing on daisy chains before, daisy chains being this, before we close this video out. Even I myself, whenever I'm playing a gig or something, I generally don't take a Pedal Power 2 Plus, or I personally use the Friedman power supplies on our show boards. But I don't take something like that on my personal board, because I know I'm going to be probably in a bar somewhere, and the power is going to be noisy anyways, and there's going to be a lot of noise, and people aren't going to hear that much. If it's real noisy in between songs, I'm going to turn something off. So it's just not that big of a deal to me personally when I'm playing out. When I'm recording, different story altogether. I want it to be as quiet as I can. But with daisy chains, a lot of times you're going to have more noise in general. And sometimes when you daisy chain one pedal with another pedal, especially if we're talking like incorporating digital circuits, there can be all kinds of noise problems. There can be more just like strange oscillating type of, oscillatory, whatever that word is, oscillating type of noises. There can just be more like of a hiss in the background. There can be AM radios. Like there's just other things that can happen once you start doing that. Plus, the way pedals are made in general, we're filtering the power when it's coming into it. I know I'm getting off the weeds. I'm trying not to do too much. We're filtering the power as it comes into it. And when you're paralleling that, all those filters sort of combine together, and it starts to make the power not technically, but sort of sluggish in a way. And in other words, it just is not going to react the same as if you're using a truly isolated power supply for each pedal. So anyways, hope that helps you. Hope that really clears some things up, and see you later with another video.